All right, it's time to review and recap what happened on Saturday. The Monday morning edition of the Morning Pit is all about looking back at the game, what we think 2 days removed, 48 hours after the game, what we think about the game, any new thoughts, new observations, and where everything stands heading into the new week, and certainly coming off of Pitt's 55-24 win over Kent State in the season opener on Saturday. Yeah, there's plenty of things to talk about. We had a lot to talk about on the live show after the game. That was a lot of fun. Went about 70, 75 minutes, somewhere around there. Had a few beers and talked a little football. There's nothing much better than that. I know it's not much to think about here on a Monday morning, but it's a lot of fun to do on a Saturday afternoon. After the game ends, we sit down and talk right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and hopefully you got a chance to tune in for the live show. If you missed it, you can catch up. It's right here on our YouTube page. It's also posted on the website at Panther-Lair.com, so good place to go. I think it's fun. I always enjoy doing those post-game shows. I always think it's a lot of fun. I get a lot of good reaction to it. A lot of people say that's their favorite show that we do, and we definitely enjoy it. So if you want to be part of it, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, and that way you won't miss it next week when we go live after the Cincinnati game. But right now it's all about Kent State, or more to the point, it's all about Pitt's performance against Kent State as we recap the Panthers' win in the season opener and see what kind of main storylines and topics there are to carry into week 2 of the 2024 season here on the Monday morning edition of the Morning Pit on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's Monday here on the Morning Pit, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and this will probably be our regular Monday morning activity each week as we go through the season. We'll just sort of be recapping the game. Like I say, we go live after the game ends on Saturday, and that's just sort of instant reaction, but 2 days later we have some time to think about it, review the stats and the legal pads, and look at Pro Football Focus, and maybe rewatch a couple plays just to remind ourselves of what happened, get some fresh thoughts, and really it's sort of like a segue from the previous week into the next week, because we'll be recapping Saturday's game. We'll be talking about what happened in Saturday's game, but really from the perspective of what's relevant going forward. So what needs to happen between week 1 and week 2, that's what we're going to talk about here at the start of week 2, and it's what we'll do each week on the Monday edition of the Morning Pit here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You know what we always ask you to do? Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. The like button, I mean, you see it, it's a little thumbs up down there. The subscribe button, we put it right there over that yellow.com. I mean, YouTube has its own subscribe button. We have an extra one right there on the screen. You can click that, and that way you won't miss any of our Pit video content. These daily Morning Pit videos, our weekly live show every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m., and our post-game shows, in addition to all the press conferences and interviews and things like that. So you want to make sure you're tuned in, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and of course, stay on the website Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for all your Pitt sports coverage that you can handle. Message boards are certainly lively in the aftermath of the game. They were lively during the game, after the game, throughout the weekend. People talking about what they saw in the win over Kent State. A lot of sort of, there's a lot of caveats right now. You know what I mean? There are a lot of things being said that are always sort of prefaced with, I know it was just Kent State, or we'll see what happens when they play someone better, when they play a power conference opponent, or just anybody other than one of the worst teams in FBS. And so there's a lot of caveats, and that's a good thing. You know what I mean? Like you'd much rather have to use the preface of, I know it was just Kent State, or, you know, we'll see what happens when they play a better team. You'd rather have to say those kinds of things than have to say, like, and that was all they could do against Kent State. What's going to happen when they play a better team? You know, like if they had struggled, you know. So anything we say here, no matter what we talk about, no matter what happens, I mean, you know, Duke beat Elon 26-3. So that was a 23-point victory. But how great are you feeling if you play Elon and you win 26-3? You know, there were some other games in the ACC this week. Where is it? That I was looking at that, you know, you just said, I mean, obviously SMU in week 0 just sneaked past Nevada by 5. I mean, NC State, they beat Western Carolina, an FCS team, but they barely beat them by 2 touchdowns. They had to score 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter just to come out ahead. They were trailing Western Carolina, was it 21-17 after 3 quarters? And so you'd rather not be in that situation. Wake Forest beat the crap out of North Carolina A&T. North Carolina barely snuck past Minnesota, but that's a real game, an FBS game. Stanford power conference game. Stanford lost to TCU. Clemson lost to Georgia. Miami beat Florida. Virginia Tech lost to Vanderbilt on the road. Louisville thumped Austin Peay 62-0. Syracuse got past Ohio 38-22. Not exactly a blowout. Cal beat UC Davis by 18. Again, not a huge blowout. Virginia beat Richmond by 3 touchdowns. Georgia Tech beat Georgia State by about 23 points. And SMU rolled over Houston Christian. So, I mean, you look at the biggest wins point-wise. I mean, SMU beat Houston Christian by 52. Louisville beat Austin Peay by 62. And Pitt beat Kent State by 31. You'd much rather be on that end of it than in some of these games where you're sneaking past. You're just winning by a couple touchdowns, or you're trailing going into the third quarter like NC State was. A team that has, the expectations are as high for NC State as they are for any team in the conference, and here you are against Western Carolina in your season opener, and you're struggling against the Fighting Kerwin Bells. You're going down to the fourth quarter before you really put that game away. So you'd much rather be on that end of it. And not only was Pitt on the positive end of a blowout win, a 30-point victory, where they scored more points than they scored in any game last season, and they gained more yards than they gained in any game last season, but their offense actually looked good. It wasn't a game that you walked away from saying, feels like smoke and mirrors a little bit, that they ended up with 55 points. It was this or that. I mean, the offense legitimately looked good. Guys were open. Passes were completed. Lots of guys got the ball. Lots of guys moved the ball down the field. Bunch of guys scored touchdowns. It was a very effective offensive performance. And while there's plenty for us to say about the defense, and we will say it today and throughout the week, this ultimately came down to the offense. Everybody wanted to see how the offense was going to look. The brand new offense with Cade Bell, with a new quarterback, a bunch of new skill position players, a few new starters on the offensive line. Like, how is this going to look? Kent State, it doesn't matter if it's Kent State or Georgia or Robert Morris, like whoever you were playing, regardless, just how was the offense going to look? And I mean, I think you give at the minimum a passing grade for the overall performance of the offense. And we'll get a little bit more into the weeds on the offense in a second, a little bit more specific. But overall, the offense, it's a passing grade at minimum, and I think you would say B plus, A minus on the performance. And really, I actually don't think it's a hyperbole. Or I don't think it's hyperbole to say you give it like an A minus, or if you want to borderline B, like B plus or something. They had 1 turnover, completed 9 out of 16 third down conversions, 570 yards of offense. The number kept changing. Passing game was really effective, got a lot of yards on the ground, struck and attacked, and they were successful in the red zone, scored 5 out of 6 times that they got into the red zone. Let me just double check on how many of those were touchdowns, because the red zone scoring is not a perfect stat. Let me see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All 5. All 5 of their scores from the red zone. They were in the red zone 6 times. They scored 5 times, and they were all touchdowns. So you absolutely take that. The red zone scoring stat, the way the NCAA keeps it, I don't like it because they just go on a scoring percentage. How often do you score when you get in the red zone? But I don't like that because it basically says that a touchdown is equal to a field goal. And so, I much prefer touchdown percentage, what percentage of your red zone attempts or red zone drives turn into touchdowns. And I also like points per red zone possession. That might be my favorite. Honestly, points per red zone possession, because then you do get credit for field goals, but not as much credit as you would get for a touchdown, which is the way it should be. Pitt got, just on touchdown points, not counting the extra points, 30 points on 6 red zone possessions. They averaged 5 points per possession. That's pretty good. I take that. I take that. So lots of things I think to like about this offense, opponent notwithstanding, because yes, it was Kent State, who's not going to be very good this year, and they're not very good. But you did what a competent team, what a good team should be able to do. It doesn't necessarily mean you are a good team. It's one of these things where, like, a bad performance against a team like Kent State would disprove the notion that you're a good team. And, whereas a good performance against a team like Kent State just leaves the option open for you to prove yourself as a good team. Particularly as we talk about the offense here. But there was very little to dislike, and I think that starts with the performance of Eli Holstein. Look, we'll talk to Pat Narduzzi later today. He may or may not say Eli Holstein is our guy going forward, but I don't think we need him to say it. I don't think they, if they want to put an or on the official depth chart again, Eli Holstein or Nate Yarnell, go ahead. I don't think it matters. And I don't think it's mattered maybe since that pass to Kenny Johnson on the first drive. Honestly, like when he made that pass, he ran for a touchdown. Touchdown came back, threw for a touchdown to Konate Mumfield. Like, I think that was it. I think that sealed the deal for the game. And I think it sealed the deal for the season, fairly or unfairly. And I think it's fair enough because you went into that game on Saturday wanting to see which quarterback could move the offense. And Eli Holstein moved the offense. Nate Yarnell did an okay job of it as well when he came in. But clearly, Eli Holstein was able to run the offense. He wasn't perfect. He had 10 incomplete passes. He threw an interception. He had, according to Pro Football Focus, they chart turnover-worthy plays or turnover-worthy throws. And Eli Holstein, they credit him with 3, and I think that includes the interception. I think he had at least 2 other passes, if not 3, that were almost intercepted or could have been intercepted. So he's got some things to clean up there. If you look in the ACC, there were 14 quarterbacks who dropped back at least 20 times this past week in week 1. Out of those 14 quarterbacks, Eli Holstein was second with 3 turnover-worthy plays. So not exactly a category you want to be high up on the list in. But we'll come back to some of these stats from Pro Football Focus in a second. Some of these stats on how Eli Holstein stacks up to the other quarterbacks in the ACC. But if you were going to give Eli Holstein a grade for his performance on Saturday, I think it would be no worse than a B+. 336 yards, 30 of 40 completion, 75% completion rate, 3 touchdowns and a pick, had a nice scramble or 2, ran for, converted a third down with a nice scramble, made a lot of good plays, made a lot of good throws, knew where the open receiver was going to be and got the ball to him a lot. And it's 75% completion. Can't argue with that. His yards per attempt wasn't all that wild. 8.5, which is middle of the pack for the 14 guys in the ACC who had at least 20 dropbacks. And from here on out for the rest of this conversation, I'm just going to say ACC quarterbacks and take that to mean the 14 guys who dropped back at least 20 times. So 8.5 yards per attempt, about middle of the pack among those ACC quarterbacks. Similarly, his average depth of target, 8.2 yards, was like 9th among those 14 quarterbacks in the ACC who dropped back at least 20 yards. But it says something about the kind of offense that Pitt ran on Saturday, and maybe the kind of offense they'll run every week. They weren't really trying to attack downfield a lot. They took a few shots. Nate Yarnell did, and Eli Holstein did as well. But by and large, they were taking what the defense gave them. And what the defense gave them was those short to medium range passes. And so take it. If you're going to get downfield, if you're going to be able to move the ball downfield and pick up first downs and keep rolling, and they had 31 first downs on Saturday, double the amount that Kent State had, just keep chipping away at it. It's fine because, number one, you're just going to keep moving the ball. And number two, if the defense does finally adjust, and we talked about this on the postgame show, if the defense does adjust and they start sitting down on those shorter routes, those comebacks and those stop routes and those out routes and all those things, great. Let them do it. Let them get a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, creep up a little bit closer, and then you attack downfield. Then you get vertical. One hand washes the other. I fear nothing. Go for it. Take your shots when the shots present themselves. But sometimes you have to set those shots up. And that's one thing we've heard about Cade Bell is he's very good at scheming guys open, which I think our friend Pugs35 on Twitter and on the message board said, there were more guys schemed open in the second half of that game on Saturday than in all of last season. And that's probably a bit of an exaggeration, but not by much. Guys were just open a lot. There weren't a lot of tight throwing windows that Eli Holstein had to throw in. So, that's a challenge he's going to have to be ready for. But he didn't really need to because the guys were open and they were able to pick up chunks and keep getting first downs, which that's the name of the game, right? That's what you want to do. Is keep getting those first downs. And then the more that you get those first downs from those short passes, those medium or intermediate passes, the closer you're getting to opening up that opportunity downfield. So I like that. So Eli Holstein comes out, he completes 30 passes. That was most among ACC quarterbacks this weekend. Completes 75% of his passes, tied for second in completion percentage among ACC quarterbacks. He ends up with 338 or 336 yards, which was the third most, but a lot of it is he had the lowest, or ninth. He was ninth in average depth of target. So high completion percentage passes, high percentage passes, I guess is the phrase that I'm looking for, and it ends up working out really well because he puts up impressive numbers and has an impressive day. I thought there were a couple other stats I thought were interesting from Eli Holstein. He was also getting rid of the ball quickly. So Pro Football Focus has a stat, time to throw is the average time to throw on all dropbacks. Now, I don't know if this is just like how quickly you were under pressure or if this was how quickly the ball came out, but Eli Holstein was 12th out of 14 ACC quarterbacks with 2.1 seconds on his time to throw, according to Pro Football Focus. Now, part of that might have been pressures because he was under some pressure. I think there were some holes in the pass blocking, the pass protection, but I think he was also getting the ball out quickly. He was getting rid of the ball quickly. I felt, if there was one criticism, and I can't really point to a specific example, this is just sort of more anecdotal. It's more feel. I felt like sometimes the ball took a little while to get to the receiver. Like it floated or he didn't put a lot of zip on it, and he didn't need to. I mean, a lot of these passes were caught. But I think as you saw a few balls the one that was intercepted and a couple that weren't intercepted but seemed like they could have been, I think the ball floated a little bit. Not necessarily in a mechanical way, but almost intentionally to sort of give his receiver time to make a play on the ball. He's going to have to get a little more zip, I think, because while he got rid of the ball quickly, he didn't stand in the pocket real long, which is good. I thought it seemed like sometimes it felt like it took the ball a long time to get to the receiver, even though they weren't really pushing the ball downfield. They weren't really trying to attack in that way. It was more that kind of intermediate distance, medium distance, short distance type of passes. So that's something to keep an eye on if it seems like the ball is just a little slow through the air. And I don't know how to describe it. Maybe nobody else really perceived that. Maybe I'm the only. Maybe it was just me. It certainly wouldn't be the first time I thought I was seeing something and it didn't really turn out to be the case. But maybe that's something to keep an eye on, something to work on. Obviously, Desmond Reed was outstanding for Pitt on Saturday. 234 yards, all-purpose yards, led the team, led all players, actually. Kenny Johnson had 191 all-purpose yards. Both of those were higher than Kent State's top guy, Luke Floria. The wide receiver had 129 all-purpose yards. But Desmond Reed going for 234, 145 rushing yards, 11 receiving yards, 78 punt return yards with that long punt return touchdown, a play that I don't think he should ever make again. If you are about to get hit, don't try to play the ball off a bounce. That was a terrible decision, and that really was. When you rewatch that play, you'll flash back to it of saying like, "Wow!" When I saw he was about to try and catch that ball off the bounce, I just kept saying, "Don't." And then when he bounced off the guy who was right there to hit him as soon as he got the ball, I said, "Oh wait, this might be good." I personally, I would take Desmond Reed off punt return altogether, and I know this feels like the wrong way of thinking when we just saw him return a punt 78 yards for a touchdown, but he, in one game, to me, proved his worth and value to this offense. As far as the weapon that he can be, how explosive he can be, and just how much of a game changer and a playmaker he can be. I think you have to be mindful of his workload, of how many hits he's taking. So he had 18 touches on Saturday. One of those was the punt return. I would not put him on punt return anymore, even if you got that big play, and that's awesome. He means too much to you on offense to take that risk on special teams, if you ask me. And yes, they got a touchdown out of it. I am inclined to think Desmond Reed will score more offensive touchdowns than special teams touchdowns this season. I'm inclined to think that he's 1-to-1 right now, but I'm inclined to think he will do better on a touchdown per opportunity basis on offense than he does on special teams. And so I think you're not going to get enough out of him on special teams to make it worth the risk of Desmond Reed taking extra hits. You need him on offense, and so I would probably adjust that. Shout out to Cade Bell and Eli Holstein for getting the ball to Gavin Bartholomew. Ties his career high with 5 receptions. Also pulled it in for 66 yards. Pitt's third leading receiver in the game. Caught more passes than every Kent State player except for one. So nice to see Alberto getting involved, as he should be. And just in general, I thought the receivers did a really good job executing their routes and getting open. There weren't a lot of, like last year, and I hate, we have to stop doing this. We have to stop comparing to last year. We have to stop talking about last year. We have to stop thinking about last year. It's 2024. But last year, guys just weren't open. They just weren't getting open. It was whether it was the routes they were running, the design, or their execution, whatever it may be. They just weren't getting open. On Saturday, they were open. Guys were open a lot. And I don't think it was just Kent State blowing coverage. I think it was good scheme. I mean, Cade Bell, again and again, has talked about scheming to get guys open. And the other coaches who came in, Jeremy Darvo and J.J. Laster and Lindsey Lamar, these guys have talked about, from their experience working with Cade Bell, that this is what he does and this is what he is good at. And we'll see if it holds up for the next 11 games, but it's certainly in game 1, it was the case. Guys were open. They were schemed open, and the passes were there to make. That's how you end up with Eli Holstein completing 75% of his passes. Short passes, sure. High percentage passes, sure. But the passes were there. The plays were there to be made, and he made the throws. And so, I think, again, passing grade at minimum for the new offense in game 1. I would even go so far as to say B+ or A-. Probably A-. Take into consideration the opponent and everything like that, I would say I would give it an A- for how this offense operated, was executed, was called, and generally how it performed. Which, when you have 570 yards and you score 6 touchdowns, I'd say your offense should get some credit. 31 first downs, over 50% on completion percentage, or third down conversions. Yeah, you had a pretty good day at the office. And we didn't even get to the defense. I got a lot to say about the defense. I'm guessing tomorrow we might be talking about whatever Pat Narduzzi says today about the quarterbacks, but we will have a long conversation about the defense this week. We'll also be breaking it down a lot on Panther-Lair.com with a film review and numbers and all kinds of stuff. This is what we do. We're in our regular season mode, in-season mode. We're going to have lots of content for you at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And, of course, our YouTube channel right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Like this video and subscribe so you never miss any of our Pitt video content, whether it's these Morning Pitt videos, our weekly live show on Wednesday nights at 8:30, or our post-game shows, which are always a lot of fun to do. So tune in for all of that. It's a lot of fun. Like and subscribe, and you won't miss any of it. I hope you had a great weekend. Enjoy your Labor Day. Thanks for watching this video today, and we will catch up with you tomorrow morning for the Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.